In ASEAN Business Report right now, live on air, we are having a special guest who is the European Government Relations Specialist who's flying from Brussels to attend the show today is Mr. Alexander Moore, sitting next to me right here. Sawadee krap, welcome to the program.
Sawadee krap.
So we are going to talk about the Euro debt crisis situation as of today. So could you please, Mr. Alexander, can you lay out the problem that's persisting Europe as of this moment?
Well, at the moment, the financial situation in Europe is very critical, as there is a trust crisis at the moment going on in the European Union. The financial markets are sliding since 2 weeks now. If you look at the German markets and the French markets, they are declining drastically. We are talking about 15 to 20% at the moment of loss, which is now starting to, of course, to touch the economies as well. Just recently, the outlook for Germany was adjusted down. So at the moment, the situation in the Eurozone looks very weak, beside all the countries that are already having financial problems, of course.
There's been a suggestion that the Euro area bond would actually help the European crisis. It's a way out for the European crisis, but there are the members. Some members have agreed, and the German Chancellor Angela Merkel has resisted this. In your opinion, do you think this Euro area bond will materialize?
I think what you just laid out is absolutely correct. The Eurobond situation is a very tricky issue for that sense. At the moment, the bailout of the countries who have financial problems is basically based on a short-term assumption that the economy is going to recover. What we're having with the Eurobonds is like that in the long term, you are actually guarantee that you're gonna guarantee for the debts of other countries. So therefore, some countries are reluctant. You mentioned Germany and France. Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, and Nicolas Sarkozy, the French President, met last week to discuss the Eurobond issue. It was apparently not on the table, even so I'm sure it was touched at one point in the discussions. The Eurobonds are not in the short term an option for the European Union, because Germany and France have doubts that this would allow the countries not to strengthen their households and to keep on doing structural reforms. Instead, it would weaken a little bit the attempts to come back to a decent household policy. Therefore, at the moment, this is not on the agenda. But you can hear already that a lot of countries are raising their voices and want to have these Eurobonds. And from my personal opinion, I think there is an option that in 2-3 years' time, maybe this whole issue will be discussed again. However, please note that in Germany, for example, the public does not support any kind of Eurobonds. They're already very critical about the current financial, let's say, security net that is built. Therefore, from a political perspective in Germany, I do not see that this will happen very soon.
Right. What about the euros? Is it stabilized? Is the financial situation in European countries stabilized at this point?
At this very moment, I think it's much more stable than it was 1 or 2 or 3 weeks ago or 2 months ago. Right. However, the financial situation, of course, is very fragile. The US raised concerns about the European and German bank structures, and are very anxious that there could be like a second Lehman problem coming up, that some German banks failed due to not repaid interests. However, I think European Union tried its very best to stabilize the situation. In that sense, it conducted a stress test with the European banks, and it went actually quite well, and the outcome was very favorable for the European banks. I wouldn't overrate that problem, but what is a development at the moment, which is very, I would say, a little bit scary, is that the European banks tend not to borrow each other money
Right.
to
There's
that
a
extent
problem of hoarding,
what they should.
Money hoarding. They're holding
Absolutely,
on
absolutely
to the money,
correct.
not lending to the
We are
weaker
talking
members.
about over 100 billion at the moment, which is it's far too much.
Right.
Don't forget, borrowing in between banks is basically the oil of the economy. This has to happen, otherwise we are running into a financial situation, a financial crisis like what we had 2 years ago.
We want you to talk a little bit about the social unrest we've seen in the UK, in Spain, Greece, or Ireland. Do you think this will continue to spread, and are governments ready to handle this?
I think one has to a little bit see it from 2 perspectives. The one is the social unrest and the demonstrations against governments where the countries are imposing measures to consolidate the households. This is, for example, the case in Spain. This is, for example, the case in Greece. These has to be taken very, very serious because they are basically not. There's a problem in selling to the public that this is an absolutely necessary issue, and a lot of people in Greece and Spain have big doubts that their governments will be able to restructure it in a socially balanced way. For the UK, I think the situation from what I can tell is slightly different. In the UK, it was less targeted on the policies of the UK government, even though they were maybe the reason for the unrest in the long run. However, there was much more violence targeted also at other individuals, and there was a lot of looting, which didn't happen to that extent in Greece or in Spain. Therefore, I think the situation in UK is maybe slightly different and has to be looked a little bit more in the specific UK circumstances with the new government and the measures taken.
And what about the short-term outlook for this debt crisis in the whole Europe? Would they really have to raise about 80 billion euros by year end? So what is going to likely happen?
Maybe to put it even a little bit in a more historic perspective, you are absolutely right. This is a huge challenge in a very difficult situation at the moment for the European Union. Since its establishment in the 1950s, it's now about 50 years that the European Union exists.
Right.
It went through a lot of crises, it went through a lot of enlargement procedures, and so far it can be perceived as a success story. The financial crisis at the moment in the European Union is a crisis, that for sure, but I'm quite positive that the European Union will overcome it. I just hope that it will come stronger out of this and do the necessary structural reforms, and not will come out weaker of it, because the European Union is so far a success model, and I'm sure it will stay that way.
Okay, and looking past this year, what's going to,
Looking past this year, we may going to see that the European Union is going to restructure its institutions. We might have a governance, an economic governance introduced, which was introduced by Merkel and Sarkozy in the last meeting last week. So we will have a government dealing with economics on a European Union level. Apparently it will be located near the presidency of European President Van Rompuy, who will take care of this. This has to be seen how it will be established and how it will work, and what kind of tools they will have in their hands to actually work effectively. However, these institutional changes are necessary, and they will happen, and I'm quite positive that the European Union will hopefully be able to deal with this.
Okay, that's all for Mr. Alexander Moore. And that was Mr. Alexander Moore from the European Government Relations. And the specialist here has given us very inside details of how the picture of the Euro debt crisis will be in the coming futures, which is probably being able to be handled in a short run. But looking for further problems, we have to keep monitoring the situation. And that's all the time we have for the ASEAN Business Report. And you can follow us Monday to Friday from noon to 1 p.m. local time.
You can also leave your comments or suggestions on our Twitter page at ASEAN Biz Report or facebook.com/ASEAN Business Report. I'm Weena Chongprasit.
And I'm Ong Anand Amartya Kun. สวัสดีครับ
สวัสดีค่ะ